and then eventually headed his way inside the Penn West office building. As we look now from high above the scene with Chopper 11, you can see the various different units that are on the scene. A moment ago, we saw that at least some SWAT team members had entered that building. As Andy pointed out to us, he saw just a moment ago, well, 40 minutes ago, we had police officers outside of the building with guns drawn behind their cars, and suddenly those officers are no longer to be seen. So we do not know whether or not those officers are inside the building or, in fact, anything in the situation has changed. You can see people along the street there. That appears to be a SWAT team member who is approaching, which may be a command. Yes, that's a SWAT team van right there. That is on the scene that we saw earlier at the McDonald's that has now moved closer in to the Penn West office building. But with the posture of the people standing behind that van would be a little more indication that something has changed here, obviously, because you do not see them crouched behind the vans. If you look at the top portion, center portion of your screen, you could see at least one, probably a detective, walking around. There's another SWAT team member who is walking casually up to the building. Now, just a moment ago, compare that picture that you're looking at now live from Chopper 11 to the picture that we showed you on unedited video of several people who obviously were employees, people who work inside that building, who are being taken away from the scene. Now, here's the video that I mentioned that we looked at earlier. Now, if you'll watch this in just a moment, you can see guns drawn, SWAT team member in a position, a kneeling position, and now some employees, obviously, who are trying to leave the scene, hiding behind a car for protection with a police officer and 3 SWAT team members, obviously risking their own lives to protect those who are behind them. And now here comes another woman, obviously, who had found some sort of an exit. She wanted to get out, and now you can see 2 other women who are walking slowly away from the scene, not running, but walking away from the scene, being protected from behind by a shield being held by a SWAT team officer. This was happening about 30 minutes or so ago, but it appears now that maybe the scene has changed a bit. As we saw just a moment ago from Chopper 11, you don't see the officers in this type of position. Let's go once again live in this, looking now from Sky Zoom and Chopper 11. Breaking news again, this is the McDonald's shooting along Penn Avenue in Wilkinsburg. We do have some critical injuries from this shooting. It is yet to be confirmed exactly how many people have been injured. Also, there are a lot of people in this area, so probably one of the main goals at this point is to make sure that you get everybody out safely and somehow find a way to end this situation without any more injuries occurring. Obviously, we have to be very careful as far as what we show at this particular point as the SWAT team moves in to try to figure out what the situation is. We have yet to hear exactly what started the shooting. Not really sure about that yet, but what we do know that this has been an extremely tragic day in Wilkinsburg at the McDonald's along Penn Avenue. Let's go back up now, high above the scene in Chopper 11, Andy Gassmeyer, who's been watching this now for, I guess, about an hour or so, Andy. It appears to me that maybe there is a different atmosphere at the moment, at least looking at the pictures that we can see.
Well, consider for a moment now, Bob, we've been about an hour and a half into this situation, and just within the last 20 minutes, as you just indicated in your early remarks, the atmosphere, I should say, seems to have changed here. We saw that SWAT team truck pull up. A couple of officers were walking up behind it. Then they were joined by maybe 5 or 6 other additional SWAT team officers. None of them seemed to have their guns at the ready or seemed intent on going in any one direction real quick, as if there was a reason to do so hurriedly. We see the people standing outside the West Penn office building, and they seem to be very casual about this situation right now. So you wonder a couple of things here. Has this situation been neutralized? That is, do they have the suspect in custody inside the building? And so there is the parade rest kind of stance that these SWAT team members have taken outside the building, or are they now in communication with this suspect? And they have been able to calm him down or whatever, or have they been able to make contact with him through a relative who, for all we know right now, could be on the scene. At any rate, the atmosphere, to use your word a few moments ago, seems much more relaxed as opposed to intense as it was a half hour or so ago. So you cannot help but infer from this that maybe this situation is working out a lot more favorably than you might have thought a half hour ago. But that is only a guess, and we emphasize that that is only a guess at this point in time. but you would think with the officers there at, as I said, something of a parade rest demeanor about them, they may have this situation under control. We have not heard directly from anybody in police yet, so it's hard to say exactly what is going on down there right now. Bob, back to you.
Andy, obviously this is a very tragic situation that's happening in Wilkinsburg. We're doing our very best as far as getting the most up-to-the-minute and accurate information for you. Our entire Channel 11 newsroom is working on this story, which began at about 11:30 this morning. We have numerous crews on the ground trying to find out exactly what's happening, who's been evacuated from the scene, who is still on the scene, and how many injuries has occurred at this particular point. Amy Marcinkowitz, of course, has been with us throughout the morning covering this tragic story and has the latest for us now. Amy?
I can tell you, I just talked with him, Bill Simonton. He is an employee in the Metro Family Practice, the office that the SWAT team is surrounding right now. He came and he talked to me, and he said that this suspect walked into his building, looked around, and told the people, "I have one bullet left. I'm going to use it." Everybody was evacuated out of that building. He said the suspect was calm, cool, walked in, just spoke with them, didn't say why he was there. He thought he was a patient. He told me that an office manager and a doctor in that building is still missing. He presumed that they are inside the building still with that suspect. A police source of mine just came up to me and told me that the police chief here in Wilkinsburg is going to hold a news conference on this and give us the latest information in just a few minutes. So we're going to get positioned for that. And once we do, and once he starts talking, we will bring that to you live, Bob.
All right, thank you, Amy. We want to update people who are just joining us, and we have some late information now from Alan Jennings that the FBI has set up a command post at the Wilkins house. So the FBI is on the scene, and I'm receiving word now that a hostage negotiator is on the scene as well. For those of you who are just joining us during this tragic afternoon here in the city of Pittsburgh and Wilkinsburg on Penn Avenue, a shooting occurred at 11:30 this morning. A man went into the McDonald's, began firing shots, and then shot several people, walked outside, and began walking about a block or so away to the building at the location you're looking at now live from Chopper 11 at Sky Zoom, evidently shooting another victim on the way to this location. We have confirmed reports at this particular point from Dr. Mike Rosen, who is standing by now at Presby Hospital, keeping us up to date on the medical situation, that at least 4 victims have been admitted to that hospital alone. They are reportedly in critical condition. There is another victim as well that has been admitted to another unnamed hospital at this particular point. And then we saw another victim as well a little bit earlier at about, I would say, maybe 12:40, who was taken from the scene in a Monroeville ambulance. Now you're looking at the scene as police are there along with the SWAT team, and as I mentioned just a moment ago, the FBI also on the scene and a hostage negotiator. However, the stance, it looks a little different than what we saw earlier today. Do we have more of that unedited tape to give you an idea of what was happening? You can see that obviously this is unedited video of Pittsburgh Police, Wilkinsburg Police, and several other units arriving at the scene fully loaded and preparing for whatever they might come across, and the SWAT team making its preparations. We'll be very careful, obviously, not to show you the SWAT team in action, as we do not know at this particular point what stage this incident is at this moment. Earlier, we had shown you police cars surrounding this building with police officers looking over the cars with their guns drawn, aiming at the building. As you see now, that situation has in fact changed, at least from the outside appearances. As you can see, several police officers now standing not in quite a tense fashion as they were earlier. Once again, we're still trying to find out exactly what the situation is at that scene as far as the evacuation of other people who may have been in that area. Earlier, we saw several people who were evacuated under the armed protection of the SWAT team and several police officers as they moved away from the scene. And now you can see another police officer taking off. It appears to me at this particular point, some of the equipment not putting it on. It's hard to tell of SWAT team members who are at the scene. We had talked earlier to the manager of the Wilkins house, and he said that it appeared to me that the man was in a building, the Penn West office building, where he could not access the Wilkins house. We do know that within the building that the shooter is supposedly in at this particular point, there is an adult daycare. There is also some medical offices and a probation office, as we watch very closely now this scene. Now, what you're looking at here from Chopper 11 is the scene of where the shooter is believed to be now. The McDonald's is just up the street. We might want to zoom back a little bit. I don't know if we can get a full perspective as far as how far the McDonald's is away, but you can see it right there. It's literally just around the corner. This is where the shooting began, with reports of several people being shot inside the McDonald's, and the shooter leaving the scene, moving up the block, shooting someone on Wood Street, and also we had reports that another employee at another fast food restaurant along the way had been shot as well. We also saw earlier in the parking lot of McDonald's that there were still several witnesses inside the McDonald's who were giving their story, obviously being questioned by detectives on the scene. And we have several units on the scene, including Andy Gassmeyer, who is in Chopper 11. Andy, at this particular point, as you gaze down upon the scene and look at the SWAT team members move around, I was trying to discern whether or not the SWAT team member in the back of that van was taking equipment off or putting it on, trying to figure out where we're at in this particular situation. What can you tell?
Well, that's what our photographer Mark Johnson and I were just trying to figure out, Bob, because about 15 minutes ago that SWAT team unit came up and you saw a couple of SWAT team officers casually approaching it. You saw 4 or 5, maybe 6 others who just as casually walked up to it, and it looked like they were in a disarming mode, if you will. And then just within the past few minutes, as you were talking about the scene in general, we saw a few officers walk up, put on what appeared to be bulletproof vest, and then no more than a minute or so after that, a couple of other officers take off their bulletproof vests. You're looking down at a car right now, at a police car with several officers around it, and it's hard to tell if they are getting ready to go in or they are leaving. One appears to be taking off equipment. You see one, can't quite make that out, crouching down near the left rear tire of that police car.
Andy,
let me to be taking off equipment.
Andy, let me jump in just for a moment. I'll come back to you in just a second, but I do want to update that we do have some information from the Wimco building across the street from McDonald's. Evidently, we're getting a report that some of the people who are in the McDonald's had now been moved over to that building, which is nearby, and that they were brought there by police. Wilkinsburg police are confirming now that they have a count of 5 people who were shot. Also that a worker called in originally the first report that there was a shooting at the McDonald's and that a manager had been shot in the head and 2 other people were shot as well. Police, of course, now trying to find the suspect, which evidently is holed up in the Penn West office building. As you can see, SWAT team people are there. The FBI has also set up a command post, the FBI on the scene, and a hostage negotiation expert is there as well. Andy, what's the latest that you have? Can you see, as far as we're a little tight on this shot at the moment, we saw that ambulance a moment ago that was about a block or so away. Has that moved at all, or has the scene pretty much stayed static at this particular point?
Well, as we pull back wide, we'll be able to determine that in just a matter of seconds. But it appears that the officers that we were just talking about, if there they are, those ambulances, still 3 of them at least, those ambulances still stand at the ready, waiting for whatever might come out of this very intense situation. Those officers we were referring to just a minute or so ago are in fact, or did appear to be, suiting up. So you would think that they would be ready to go in. There you see on the corner probably 7 or 8 officers, and some of them are wearing bulletproof vests. It's easy to tell that even from up here. So, you know, we had mentioned a moment ago that there was a hostage negotiator being brought in. We don't know at this point in time if they've been able to neutralize the situation to the extent that maybe the suspect has agreed to talk to that hostage negotiator, but obviously they're not taking any chances that it would work out with hopefully they're being able to talk him out of the building and surrendering. Nobody is going to be leaving this area anytime soon, it would appear.
And once again, just to update everyone, the ambulances could in fact be on the scene pretty much as operating procedure. Is not indicative that there could possibly be more injuries inside the Penn West office building. We have no reports at this particular point of anyone being injured inside the building. However, the shooting, which started at 11:30 at that McDonald's on Penn Avenue, we do know there are at least 5 people who have been injured. 4 of the victims reportedly at UPMC Presby. Dr. Mike Rosen reporting that those 4 victims are in critical condition. We also know that at least 1 other victim has been taken to another hospital as well. well. For those of you joining us, this began early this morning. It was a very fluid situation when police arrived on the scene, and in fact, when we went on the air at about 12 o'clock, police were just at that particular point. As now you see a shot of the Wilkins house. This is across the street, basically very close by to the Penn West office building. This is a long-term care facility, the Wilkins house, and at this particular point, the people in that building are not in any danger because the access is limited from the other building to the Wilkins house. When we went on the scene, police were just at that point surrounding the building, Penn West office building, where it is believed now, according to the manager of the Wilkins house, that that is where the man went after the shooting, that he went in there. Whether or not he has any hostages, whether or not anyone is in fact still in that building, we have not received any reports or any phone calls from anyone within the building, as has happened in other unfortunate situations like this that has happened before, where people may be in the building, they have access to telephones, maybe not in the part of the building where the shooter is, but they call out to let people know where they're at and to give police an ability to see what is happening. Also on the scene, Andy Gassmeyer and, of course, Amy Marsikowitz. Amy reported to us earlier that it was a manager and possibly a McDonald's employee that had been shot in the face. We had at least one report that the manager was shot in the head. Obviously, we do not have the names of any of the victims at this particular point, and we want to be very careful as far as the information we report, trying to confirm as much of it as possible with the SWAT team, with the police departments that are on the scene, so we can bring you the most accurate information. This situation has been going on now for almost an hour and a half or so. As we continue to move into the afternoon, none of the police units have moved at this particular point, and this situation is still very much an active one as far as we know inside that building, as the SWAT team still stands at the ready and the FBI now has set up a command post. Let's go back up live now to Chopper 11 and Andy Gassmeyer. Andy?
Yeah, Bob, I think we can say without equivocation this time around that those officers we saw below us before, and we couldn't quite make out what they were doing, were in fact getting their gear on and getting ready for whatever orders they might be given. And when I say gear, I mean, among other things, their bulletproof vests. There are a few officers who, you can see a group of officers below us right now, just diagonally across from the corner of the Penn West building, where just a minute ago we saw two officers standing at the open doorway, again, as if the situation had been neutralized, you might think, because you wouldn't think they'd want to go in that close if they knew there was a chance of being shot at. But as you can see right now, there are a few more going on up to the corner of the building where the doorway there, the door I should say, is open. Bob?
Obviously, we have not gone down as far as intensity in this situation at this particular point. Thank you for that information, Andy. I want to take you now to Amy Marsikowitz, who has been on the ground throughout this as we arrived on the scene at the McDonald's, with more information from her. Amy, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Bob. Police do know who this suspect is. They do know who this man is, and we have learned more about him. He lives in the Woodside Garden apartment that is Section 8 housing. We spoke with his landlord. She says that it all started this morning. She told us that she got a call from the suspect to come over to his house to fix a broken door. She tells us when two employees came to fix the door, he got upset, got mad, was screaming and yelling at them, and then they say he set his apartment on fire, and then they tell me that he grabbed a gun and shot one of the employees that came to fix the door in the neck, and then they saw him run down Wood Street. That's what we are hearing from his landlord. She said that she had had problems with him before. He lived in the Woodside Garden apartments. This all started this morning, she says, with a broken door and him setting his apartment on fire. That's what we are learning from the landlord from those apartments. Bob?
Amy, quickly, just to reiterate some of the information that you said there, was someone shot on the scene at his apartment, or did he set the apartment on fire and then leave and proceed to the McDonald's where the shooting began?
From what I am hearing from the landlord of the building, she says that two contractors came over to his apartment to fix that door. And when they got there, he had set the apartment on fire and then shot at one of the contractors right in the neck, she says, and then made his way down Wood Street.
Amy, let me jump in here real quickly, because we have a woman on the phone inside an office building. Debbie Schultman, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
What office building are you in, and you say that you're about to be evacuated?
We are in Home Help, which is a home health agency, and the Civets Hospice. It's an office building for a home health agency, and we understand that the rest of the building has been evacuated, and I think that there are policemen coming in now to evacuate us.
Are you inside the Penn West office building?
Yes, we are. We're on the second floor.
What have you heard? Have you heard any gunshots, any commotion whatsoever?
I heard 3 gunshots. All of my co-workers have their coats on and their purses, and they're heading towards the door. So really, I'd like to give you an interview, but I think I'm going to
go right ahead. Go right ahead. Please get out of the scene as quickly as possible. Thank you for that information. Obviously, a woman who is now being evacuated from the scene, the Penn West office building, and one thing, unfortunately, she has told us is that she heard 3 shots fired within that building. Now, we have no idea if those shots injured anyone or not, and now we see a rush of people now being brought out of the building. This is live from Chopper 11. As you can see, more people being evacuated, and there are some of the children are possibly from the daycare center that I believe is housed inside that building as well. Obviously, some very concerned parents watching this and on the scene wanting to know what is the situation with their children. As you can see, the SWAT team now in these scenes, obviously horribly reminiscent of what happened at Columbine. That this scene be repeated again is obviously a tragedy in Pittsburgh, and of course for the entire nation to have to watch this again on television as young children being evacuated from the scene where a man who is believed to have shot at least 5 people is holed up at this particular point. Amy Marsikowitz is on the ground at the McDonald's. Amy, we'll continue looking at these pictures of the people being evacuated. Amy, do you have more for us?
Bob, I can tell you I'm seeing what you're seeing. We're here on the ground, and I hope you're seeing this, people being evacuated, just like you said, with young children in their arms, walking away. This is the Penn West office building. We're a couple of blocks from the scene. I do want to tell you, inside the Penn West office building, we've been told that it is a senior daycare also, so a lot of senior citizens were also evacuated. I wasn't told that there was a daycare inside, but as you're seeing, moms or employees carrying small children out of that building. I talked with one of the employees that was in the Penn West office building. He told me that he witnessed the suspect walk into the building. He said that the suspect told him, "I have one more bullet left." Then other people left the building, he said quietly, and that he told me that a doctor and an office manager still inside the Penn West office building are missing, unaccounted for, and he believed that they are still inside that building. But that is information from an employee who got out of the Penn West office building. Bob?
And obviously we want to caution you as far as jumping into any conclusions that is from an employee inside the building as far as whether or not that doctor and office manager are in fact unaccounted for at this particular point. We would want to wait until we hear from the police department to confirm that for you. What we can confirm from Debbie Schultman, who obviously works in an office there, I didn't quite catch in our very short phone conversation which particular office inside the Penn West office building that she worked in, but as she was on the phone with us, she told us that in fact she and her co-workers were being evacuated. I asked her point blank if she had heard any shots or any noise whatsoever, and she said that she had heard at least 3 shots. We want to caution you as far as what that means. We're not really sure at this particular point, and we want to wait until we can find out from police and also the FBI, which is on the scene, exactly what is going on. But obviously a full-scale evacuation is underway in the building that you're looking at right now, with police officers trying their best to get everyone out of the building. Whether or not they know the location of the shooter, where he is within that building, we have no idea at this particular point. We were, of course, gladdened to see the children who were escaping down the side of the building through a short alleyway next to the Penn West office building. You're looking now, this is the McDonald's, and this could in fact be the Wimco building. I'm not really sure about that at this point, where they had taken some of the people who were inside the McDonald's building. I'm looking real, and it appears to me looking there, it is the Wilco or Wimco Meals Incorporated building, where apparently we had a report earlier that the people, a metals company I should say, where the people who were inside the McDonald's at the time of the shooting, the witnesses and the like, have been taken by police and obviously are being held inside the building there. Obviously many counselors being brought to the scene, police counselors as well, as we begin to find out more and more details of this breaking news story that started at 11:30 this morning, when a man apparently, and this is from Amy Marcinkowitz, who is live on the scene, she talked to the landlord of the man who lives at the Garden Apartments, and evidently he had called his landlord asking for a door to be fixed. This was a call from the suspect. When two contractors came to the apartment to fix the door, the man evidently became upset and set his apartment on fire, and then proceeded to leave the scene and began firing shots this morning at about 11:30. And as we know right now, this is a sad scene to look at this particular point, because we know that there are people that are critically injured at this particular point and fighting for their lives after being shot at this McDonald's earlier today in Wilkinsburg along Penn Avenue. We saw just a moment ago that the situation, of course, still fully active at this point, with evacuations taking place out of the Penn West office building. It's been going on now for quite a while. Rick Earl, who is standing outside the Wilkins house, which we showed you just a moment ago in a live picture, which is near the McDonald's. Let's go to Rick live now on Newsline 11. Rick?
Yeah, Bob, I just talked to a gentleman who came down here, and he tells me that his fiance was apparently inside the Wilkins house, and he was using a cellular telephone to communicate with her. He had been talking to her for about the past half hour or so, and he told me that she said she was okay, that everybody on the second floor of the Wilkins house where she was doing just fine. And just a few minutes ago, that gentleman came up to me and he said that the police had told him that his fiance was now being allowed to leave the building, was being evacuated from that building, and just minutes ago we saw a number of people walking down the street, apparently coming out of the Wilkins house. So good news for many of those folks right there is they're momentarily, I would assume, being reunited with friends and relatives who were inside. I asked this gentleman if his fiance had told him anything about what had transpired, and he said that actually she didn't see or hear anything. She just was told that she couldn't leave the building, and the next thing she knew, police were surrounding the outside of the Wilkins house. So,
Rick,
yeah, Bob,
let me jump in just for a moment here, because earlier, I believe, I'm not really sure because we've been on the air for quite a time here, we were talking about a daycare center located there. Was that inside the Wilkins house or in the Penn West office building?
I believe that's I believe it's in, this is unconfirmed, I believe it's in the Wilkins house, on one of the floors in the Wilkins house, but it is not confirmed. But we understand those the children in that daycare are not at any risk whatsoever. Bob, I want to tell you right now, I see a number of police officers running through the parking lot of the Wilkins house care home. They're just darting across the parking lot. At this moment, we're not sure what they're doing, of course, but they seem to be scrambling a bit right now. Bob?
So obviously, I would imagine, Rick, if you say that those children are in the Wilkins house, then evidently the children that we saw earlier evacuated from the Penn West office building may, in fact, have been at a doctor's office or something else there inside the building.
Quite possibly, indeed. Yeah, Bob. We have been told by police sources that there were some children in that place that's apparently called the Learning Center. We will check on that, and of course, if we learn any more about that, we'll pass it right along to you.
All right, thank you. That's Rick Earl reporting. He is outside the Wilkins house, where he has reported to us that the people inside there are safe and that the children inside the daycare center there are safe as well, and they are not in any danger, which of course would be good news for anyone who has children there. Once again, we want to give you this shot live from Chopper 11. And Andy, I want to go back to you because obviously you can see much better than I can from your vantage point. Rick Earl reported a moment ago kind of a bit of activity on the part of officers, and it appears they have taken up new positions.
Yes, as you can see, there are several officers at least that are crouched behind the cars that are in this parking lot, which sits parallel to the Penn West building where they believe that man is still holed up. And just by way of trying to put this in perspective here, it kind of makes sense now that earlier, you'll recall, we saw those SWAT team members being suited up, putting on the bulletproof vest. What they apparently are trying to do, and were doing then, was to get as many people out of the building as possible, those innocent bystanders, those office workers, whatever, so that eventually they could...
Jump in here just a moment. Excuse me for interrupting you, but we do have someone on the phone who is in the Wilkins building, I believe, on the 4th floor. Tammy Frick, I believe is her name, with the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force. Tammy, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Bob.
Tammy, what can you see at this particular point, and what are you being told?
We can't see anything, and we're staying away from the windows, frankly. We've been told to stay put. We've locked our offices up, right away. and the police have a cell phone number. They can reach us immediately. They've told us if we need to evacuate that they will get us out of here if the need presents itself. But he is not in our immediate part of the building, although the whole thing is rather frightening.
Now you're in the Wilkins building now. Is this across the street from the Penn West offices?
Well, you know, the buildings are all sort of connected together. So
Okay.
we're sort of catty-cornered from Wilkins' house. If I peek out my window, I'm facing the Eckerd
Okay.
drugstore.
As we look at live from some SWAT team officers at a doorway as they begin to enter a building. Tammy, let me ask you this. Is this what basically everyone, and now we're looking at the Wilkins house, is this what everyone is being told pretty much, is that you need to stay in the office, stay away from the windows, lock the doors, just don't do anything until you're told to move?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, with all the sirens and so forth, well, was that about an hour ago now, we pretty much didn't need to be told to stay away from the windows. That was pretty obvious that that's what we should do. So we're staying put. You know, we have about 23 people here, including some clients and volunteers, and we're just trying to, you know, keep things together until the police give us the right direction.
Have things been pretty calm inside the building? Obviously, this is not something you have to handle on a daily basis.
No, I wouldn't call this a typical day. Yeah, I'd say people are pretty calm at this point, but you know what? It's a scary thing. It really is.
With all the things that have happened in the past around the country as far as shootings are concerned, obviously you probably never thought that you wouldn't be involved in, or even nearby anything like this.
No, I can't say that ever crossed my mind. No.
All right, thank you. That's Tammy Frick. She's on the 4th floor of the Wilkins house, which is sort of connected to the Penn West office building complex. They have been told at that particular location, she is inside an office with about 20 or so other people. They're being told not to move, keep the doors locked, and wait until you hear from the police department as far as what to do at this particular point. Alan Jennings, also one of our many crews that we have on the scene at this particular point. We're going to check with him in just a moment. But first, let me update you on a phone call, a frightening phone call we had a little bit earlier with someone who was actually in the Penn West office building, as we look at several police officers now moving away from the building now down the sidewalk there. You can see the Penn West building entrance. One of the entrances to this is a pretty sizable complex. A lot of building space there, not a small building. So obviously a lot of room for a SWAT team or police to have to cover. I talked with Debbie Schultman a little bit earlier today. She was on the phone. She was in the building at the time. We only had a brief conversation because the police at that point came into her office and said it's time to go, it's time to evacuate. And as you saw earlier from some of the footage that we showed you of people being evacuated under the guard of the SWAT team as they tried to flee that area and get away from there. And obviously it appears that some of the strategy now is to keep as many people in place, not have them walking around in their offices, as we heard just a moment ago from Tammy Frick on the 4th floor at the Pittsburgh AIDS Task Force office, that she's been told to stay put. Alan Jennings also on the scene along with numerous other crews from Channel 11. And Alan, what do you know at this point?
Bob, I can tell you a couple of minutes ago we just talked to security guard Jeff Clark, who works for Delta Properties. They are the owners of Woodside Garden Apartments here on Wood Street in Wilkinsburg. They tell me that the suspect shot a maintenance worker at point-blank range in the neck early this morning, somewhere around 10:30. This maintenance worker was repairing a door on an apartment inside the Woodside Garden Apartments when the suspect pulled the gun and shot him again, point-blank range, right in the neck. We understand that this maintenance worker has been transported to a local hospital. We don't know which one yet. He is in critical condition. That's what we're told. That's only a report at this moment. We have not confirmed that with the hospital. But again,
All right,
Jeff Clark, security guard, said this is where it started.
All right, thank you very much, Alan, for that report confirming pretty much what Amy Marsikowicz had told us earlier. However, we weren't really sure whether or not an employee had been shot at the scene, but now we're hearing that a maintenance worker had been shot point-blank range in the neck and has been taken to a hospital. Let's take you now to Presby Hospital, where Dr. Mike Rosen is standing by live. He is covering that angle for us, that we know at least 4 victims were there earlier this afternoon. What's the status now, Mike?
That's right, Bob. It's pretty much the same thing. There's 4 victims. They are all still listed as critical. There's one other victim, a male victim. He has been sent over to Mercy Hospital. We don't know anything else other than that. We're still waiting for more information. We're waiting for a physician to come out. We're expecting that in just a few minutes to discuss with us what's been going on inside the emergency room. Again, all these victims are critical, and as we discussed earlier, that's pretty much a nebulous sort of term. Critical can mean anything from somebody who is actually near death to someone who's actually stable, but maybe either heading up to the intensive care unit for further stabilization, or someone who may be going for surgery, but may not be in such critical a situation that they may be near death. So we really don't know what that means. Hopefully we're going to find out more about that in just a few minutes.
Mike, as we look at unedited video, this is from earlier this afternoon, say around 12:30 or so, when they started evacuating some of the buildings. The SWAT team was moved in to help with those evacuations. Mike, I want to get back to the point that you mentioned earlier when we had talked that this is a full-scale trauma center. Obviously, dealing with gunshot wounds, a very difficult thing when it comes to an emergency room physician.
It is. Certainly, when you have very bad weather, you may have several motor vehicle accidents coming in and several traumas coming in. But when you have gunshot wounds, those become particularly tricky. And that's why you need specialized surgeons called trauma surgeons. And they're actually whole trauma teams that come down to the emergency room and work hand in hand with the emergency room physicians and emergency room nurses and technicians. And they get the whole workup going. And what they do is they triage. First, they decide which one is the most severe. Certainly, if you have a gunshot wound to the head or to the neck or to the chest, those are going to go first. Gunshot wounds to the abdomen may go second. And then less severe gunshot wounds, let's say to the arms or to the legs, those would be triaged and worked on last if you have a finite number of physicians. Luckily, it's the middle of the day here, and so you've pretty much got full staff. It's the middle of the week, so they've got their full complement of physicians, not just trauma surgeons, not just regular emergency room doctors, but you've got specialty surgeons like neurosurgeons, cardiothoracic surgeons on standby. So this is if there's going to be a time for this to happen, it's a good time for it to happen.
All right, thank you, Mike. We do have some new information. The Wilkinsburg's police chief will have a news conference that is scheduled for 1:45 Eastern Time, 1:45 here in Pittsburgh. We have also been told that the FBI and the officials have now asked for all news helicopters to pull back away from the scene. So all news helicopters have been asked to pull away from the scene, which is the Penn West office building. We will cover, of course, that news conference that will be coming to you at 1:45. That's in about 15, 20 minutes or so. We'll have that for you live from the scene. Just to sort of recap, I'm sure many of you now are just tuning in, having heard this from friends and neighbors as far as what has transpired on this very tragic afternoon in Wilkinsburg. Evidently, from the reports that we're getting right now, a man who lives at the Woodside Garden Apartments had called his landlady asking that a door be fixed. When a couple of maintenance workers showed up, the man had set his apartment on fire. He then turned a gun and shot a maintenance worker at point-blank range. At this particular point, obviously, he left his apartment. At what point he entered the McDonald's that you're looking at here along Penn Avenue, we're not sure. But at that McDonald's, evidently, he shot a manager, possibly a drive-thru employee, another man who was in a van possibly outside. The van you see right now that is being removed, and I'm sure is being removed and taken to police custody for evidence. Evidently, we had a report that one person was sitting in that van and that the man, after opening fire inside the McDonald's, walked outside and simply pulled the trigger. And I pause just for a moment because county police have now informed me that we do have at least one fatality from this shooting today in Wilkinsburg. One dead and at least 4 injured now being reported to us from county police. So we do have a death, a fatality from this shooting. Amy Marcinkiewicz is standing by live at the McDonald's. Amy?
Bob, I can tell you I just talked with Lieutenant County Police Officer Jack Brennan. He tells us that he did confirm for us that one person is dead. Somebody on Wood Street was shot, a man at Burger King was shot, and 3 people here at the McDonald's. See that van that they're taking away? Here's what Lieutenant Brennan tells me what happened. That the suspect walked up to the blue van, shot the man sitting in there. You can see the window is blown out. Jack Brennan tells me then the suspect walked into the McDonald's, went behind the counter, grabbed the manager and shot him. And then Jack Brennan tells me that he walked out of the McDonald's through the other door on this side and shot the person, the man that was in the car here waiting for his food here in the drive-through parking lot. And then Jack Brennan says he went on down the street, and that's where he is holed up right now. That is new information that we just got from the county police. I'll stay on the story and try to get you much more. Bob?
All right, thank you, Amy. We also want to tell you that there will be a news conference. The Wilkinsburg police chief has told us there'll be a news conference at 1:45 Eastern Time. That, of course, time here in Pittsburgh. And you're looking at Wilkinsburg right now as the people begin to gather at the scene. Obviously, a lot of media on the scene, as well as police officers, the FBI, a hostage negotiator. And we know that this scene is still very active and that there still is obviously an incident that is still going on inside the Penn West office building, as our helicopters have been asked to pull back away from the office building at this particular point. That always a precaution to protect the lives of the officers and anyone else in that building now as they try to end this situation. As I was saying just a moment ago before we went to Amy, this started at the man's apartment. He opened fire, shot someone, went to McDonald's, shot several people, and then moved down the street shooting another victim. We do have at this point confirmed from the county police department that at least one person has died in this shooting and that at least 4 people are injured. Earlier we had a report from Dr. Mike Rosen, so we may have even more than that. We may have 6, in fact, who have been shot. He had reported to us that 5 people were injured and that at least 4 of those were in critical condition at Presby Hospital, and that at least 1 person had been taken to another hospital. This is tape earlier today. We showed you of some of the evacuations. These are children that are being brought out of the building. And once again, this building houses an adult care center. There were some seniors that had to be evacuated, as well as some other people inside the offices. And now here, children coming out under the protection of the SWAT team. Let's take you live back now aboard Chopper 11 and Andy Gassmeyer from the latest on that scene. Andy?
Bob, it was just about 10 minutes ago, a little around 1:30, when we saw at least 5, if not 6 SWAT team members going into the Penn West building, what we assumed was the center entrance of the building. The lead SWAT team member was carrying a heavy shield, easily big enough to cover his body, and the 4 or 5 other officers behind him were crouching. They all went inside that building. We have not seen them come out. I would just say a word about the order that the helicopters flying around the area be pushed back a distance from the site. That is the Penn West building. That has more to do, I would suspect, with their concerns that the suspect, if he's still inside the building, could be watching any televised coverage right now, and of course knowing where the SWAT team members would be coming from, as opposed to there being any concern. I don't mean this critically, that an errant shot could come up this way. Neil Lawson, our chopper pilot, and I were both thinking this about the same time when we saw those SWAT team members going into this building, and that was that this is really kind of a nightmare setup for a SWAT team member or members, because what we're looking at here is a pretty big complex between the Penn West building and the Wilkins house. What we're looking at is really a series of boxes and rectangles in these building structures that are all interconnected, mostly 4- and 5-story complexes. So if the suspect is in there, obviously there is plenty of room to hide, plenty of corners to go around, and everywhere for the SWAT team members trying to track down this suspect. The fear around the next corner that they could be walking into the presence of an armed man. Bob?
All right, thank you, Andy. We are just about just a couple of minutes away from the Wilkinsburg police chief will be holding a news conference to update us on the latest official information as far as what is going on at the scene there. You're looking at a McDonald's. It's located on Penn Avenue in Wilkinsburg in the city of Pittsburgh, and you can see that right now people are gathering. I would imagine that will be the scene of the press conference. You can see the crime scene taped to the right-hand portion of your screen, just above our 11 News logo. We have been following this story since about 11:15, 11:20 this morning when the shooting broke out, and have been following it live on the air ever since. And the police still at this particular point, not at this location, but at about a block and a half away at the Penn West office building. They are now at the point where they know where the shooter is. This is a video from earlier today as the SWAT team began to try to help some of the people evacuate the building. Now, there is a building right connected to this that employees are being told to stay in your office, keep the door locked, and don't move until we tell you to move. This was earlier today. Unedited video of SWAT team members taking up their positions around the Penn West office building, waiting to see what was going to happen inside. We do know at this particular point there is an FBI command post that has been set up. There is a negotiator on the scene. Whether or not they have been able to make contact with the man who is holed up inside the Penn West office building, we have not had any information as far as whether or not they have made contact with the man who began this shooting earlier today, and the shooting began even before he got to McDonald's. We have reports now and confirmed reports that he also shot an employee at his apartment. Dr. Mike Rosen is standing by live now at Presby Hospital. Dr. Mike.
We're here at Presbyterian Hospital. We have one of the trauma surgeons, Dr. Rickard Townsend. And doctor, what's the status of the victims right now?
We've had 4 patients admitted to the hospital. All 4 are in critical condition. We've got several patients that are in various forms of evaluation, and at least one is in the operating room at this time with one of the specialty services taking care of them. We haven't been able to release a lot of information about the victims because families are starting to come in, and we've only been able to give a little bit of information to several families. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have to go back and talk to the families in a couple more minutes.
Do you have a nature of the kinds of trauma that has occurred?
Yeah, each one of the victims was suffered gunshot wounds. As a matter of fact, each one of them was the victim of just one gunshot wound apiece. Unfortunately, the shooter did a very bad job of shooting people. They were all shot in very critical areas, and that's the reason for them having such serious injuries.
Where? Heart, head?
There have been injuries in critical areas. I don't want to get into the specifics because then we're going to be maybe crossing over into things that the families should be told about, I think, first.
So one patient in surgery, any others going to surgery?
One patient in surgery, one more patient undergoing invasive diagnostic and therapeutic maneuvers in radiology. One more patient has been transported to the intensive care unit, and there's another patient in the emergency department in very serious condition.
We've gotten a report of one fatality. Has that fatality occurred here?
Can't confirm that at this time.
How has it been in the emergency room for other people coming in here now? Have you been able to manage other people with other injuries and other illnesses?
I'm not involved with the emergency department work. However, from a trauma standpoint, we had enormous amounts of resources available. As a matter of fact, we had called down the disaster component of the trauma center and had available an enormous number of individuals. We had the ability to keep racking up as far as we needed to in order to take care of these folks. We've been able to step down from that as the police have gained control of the circumstances at the scene, and now we're able to, I think, let those folks go back, and if the police let us know that something else is going to happen, then we'll be able to rack back up again.
Compared to this to other situations where maybe you have multiple motor vehicle accidents, how is this in terms of a level of intensity that you've experienced here today in the emergency room?
Multiple victims always are more complicated to take care of than one at a time. Gunshot wounds actually are a little bit simpler in terms of intellectual thought. You've got a hole, you know where the hole is going to lead to eventually, and the workup becomes relatively straightforward. Patients with motor vehicle crashes can have injuries in multiple systems, in multiple areas, and you have to really do a lot of work to try and figure that out. So the workup is much quicker and much more directed with patients with gunshot wounds. So that's one of the advantages that we had with these 4 victims, is being able to say, okay, we know what we're doing with this one, and we're going to put them in this area.
You've spoken to any of the family members yet? Are they all here?
I've only been able to speak to 2 of the family members, and that's why we're trying to be a little cautious about the information that we release about the other victims.
Safe to say the next 24 hours are going to be very telling for these victims?
I think that the next couple of hours are going to be very telling.
Dr. Rickard Townsend, thank you very much. That's a story here from Presbyterian Hospital. Now back to you, Bob.
Mike, let me ask you, just recap once again as far as how many people are at Presby and the status of their injuries.
Right. Okay, we've got 4 victims here at Presbyterian Hospital. We don't know the sex. We do know that they are critically injured. One as the doctor has just told us, is going to surgery. However, by what we're hearing, and again, we're not getting all the details yet, but it sounds like they're all very critically injured and have hit vital structures meaning either the heart, the lung, and or intracranial in the brain or the spinal cord. You would imagine that some of these folks would eventually end up going to surgery or some other kind of invasive procedure. There is one other victim we don't know anything more about yet, except for the fact that that victim is male and again is in critical condition. That victim is at Mercy Hospital.
Mike, I was struck by something the doctor said at the very end of your interview, and the fact that you asked him, are the next 24 hours critical, and he said the next 2 hours or so are critical.
You know, it's hard to say because we don't have all the details. The doctor would not tell us all the details about the individual injuries. So it's hard to tell exactly what he means by that. But that means that these victims are very severely critical. And in fact, we may see more deaths. Apparently, AIM has announced that there is, in fact, one already announced death. So there may be more in the next couple of hours.
Well, let's certainly hope not.
Right.
This has been tragic enough a day in Wilkinsburg with 1 dead, at least 4 injured at this particular point. Alan Jennings also with us this afternoon covering this terrible day here in the city of Pittsburgh. Alan, what do you have?
Bob, we're outside of the Woodside Garden Apartments where this all started about 10 o'clock this morning. We just interviewed Rebecca Van Kirk, who is the manager. Apparently the suspect, after shooting the maintenance worker, started to go after Rebecca Van Kirk. He called her on the telephone. He said he was upset with the service he'd been getting in his apartment. He apparently was rambling and cussing her out on the telephone and said he was coming
Alan,
after
I'm going to
her
have to jump in and interrupt you just for a moment because the news conference is now underway live. We want to take you there now.
3 other individuals had been shot, one at the Burger King who had made his way over to McDonald's, and a second, or 2 others that were there at the McDonald's shot. So essentially we had 3 people at McDonald's that had been actually shot, and 1 person at the Eastern Area Hospital. As the officers were coming back from the hospital area, they spotted the actor running from the McDonald's. He fired 2 shots at our officers and barricaded himself at the Eastern I believe it's the Eastern Area Services Building on the West Building, West Avenue on Penn Avenue. He barricaded himself in there. We knew we had children on the 3rd floor. We coordinated, sealed off the area with units, our units, the county, the city police. We eventually evacuated the children on the 3rd floor, got them out of there safely, and have returned them to their parents. There are some hostages were released. The actor did have hostages inside. We currently believe there are maybe 4 to 5 more hostages inside. These patients, I believe, are in wheelchairs, and we have initiated dialogue with the actor. And at this point in time, we're hoping for the best. And that's essentially what we have right now. And I can't take any questions at the moment, but we'll try to get back to you soon with more details.
Okay, we're going to hold another press conference here at 2:45, 1 hour from now.
How many total? No officers injured. Okay. At this time, 3 at McDonald's and 1. I'm sorry, that's wrong. 3 at McDonald's and 1.
Okay, Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
Amy.
let me recap for you if we took this a little bit late. The chief doesn't have much time. Let me recap what he said briefly to us. The suspect, they're not releasing his name, started on Wood Street at his apartment. He started the apartment on fire, shot one of the maintenance men there, moved on to Burger King, shot someone at Burger King. This is what the police are telling us. Moved on to McDonald's and shot 2 more people here. Somehow the person shot at Burger King made his way down here to the McDonald's, so 3 shot at the McDonald's. We've learned new information from the chief. He tells us that the actor started running from the McDonald's and actually shot twice at police officers. Then he barricaded himself into the building. He also told us, the police chief told us, that there were kids on the 3rd floor of the building, that the actor did have some hostages, that right now the police chief believes that there may be 4 or 5 hostages inside the building right now with the suspect. Some of those hostages, the police chief says, are patients, older patients in wheelchairs. We told you earlier that there is a senior daycare in that facility, so that might be the floor that he is on, and that was what the police chief is referring to. And that is a recap, the latest information from the police chief here in Wilkinsburg. As you saw him say, he will hold another news conference within the hour to give us more information. Back to you, Bob.
Amy, I'd just like for you to repeat once again, as we jumped into that news conference just a little bit late, as far as the 5 hostages, their location, and the latest information on that.
I don't know their location. I can tell you that they are inside the building, that the SWAT team has barricaded. What the police chief said to us was that they were concerned mostly about the third floor of that building because that's where children were in a daycare. They got all of those children out safely, evacuated back to their parents, but the 4 or 5 people on the inside are in a senior daycare center. These are older folks with special needs, and the police chief told me that 4 or 5 people inside, older senior citizens, they are patients that are in wheelchairs inside the building.
All right, thank you, Amy. We want to take you back again so that we can give you this information, give you a little chance to digest it. Let's replay now the news conference from the Wilkinsburg's police chief.
Essentially what had happened, I don't have the times with me right now, but our officers responded to a call of a man shot at 1208 Wood Street here in Wilkinsburg. We responded to the scene and found a structure fire. Right after that, we got a call to the Eastern Area Services Hospital, used to be Forbes Metro, I believe here, that a victim was there that had been shot. As we approached that scene, we got information that 3 other individuals had been shot. One at the Burger King, who had made his way over to McDonald's, and a second, or 2 others that were there at the McDonald's shot. So essentially, we had 3 people at McDonald's that had been actually shot, and 1 person at the Eastern Area Hospital. As the officers were coming back from the hospital area, they spotted the actor running from the McDonald's. He fired 2 shots at our officers and barricaded himself at the Eastern, I believe it's the Eastern Area Services building, on the West building, West Avenue on Penn Avenue. He barricaded himself in there. We knew we had children on the 3rd floor. We coordinated, sealed off the area with units, our units, the county, the city police. We eventually evacuated the children on the 3rd floor, got them out of there safely, and have returned them to their parents. There are some hostages were released. The actor did have hostages inside. We currently believe there are maybe 4 to 5 more hostages inside. These patients, I believe, are in wheelchairs, and we have initiated dialogue with the actor, and at this point in time, we're hoping for the best. And that's essentially what we have right now. And I can't take any questions at the moment, but I'll try to get back to you soon with more details.
Okay, we're going to hold another press conference here at 2:45, 1 hour from now.
All right, Peggy Fittigan here with David Johnson. We are relieving Bob Bruce, who did a great job with information that is changing constantly in this tragic situation.
Let's go live now to Dr. Mike Rosen at the hospital with the very latest there. Mike.
Yeah, Dave, we have a little bit more information now. We know the nature of the victims. One is in their one is in his 50s. They're all male. One is in his 50s, 2 in their 30s, and 1 is in his 20s. Now, again, they're all in critical condition. Very telling. We just interviewed the doctor, one of the trauma surgeons, and he said the next 2 hours is critical. I said, I presume that the next 24 hours is going to be critical. He said the next 2 hours is going to be critical. And that's pretty telling. That tells me that these patients are not just sort of borderline critical. These patients are critical, and we could see some mortality in the next couple of hours if they don't come through in the situations that they're going through right now. We don't know what they're getting right now. We know that 1 patient is going into surgery, 1 is in some other invasive procedure, and we don't know about the other 2. They may be so critical that they can't even take the patients into the operating room. For example, their blood pressure may be so low. So as we get the information, we'll pass it on to you. Back to you.
Mike, I was watching earlier and you spoke about the different levels of critical when you define critical. Have you been able to gauge any more about the nature of the injuries and just how serious or critical they are right now?
You know, again, David, when you hear these terms, they're unstable, they're unfair, they're critical, they're really nebulous terms, and actually terms that we as physicians don't really use. They're used really for the public. So when I hear critical says to me the person is in the critical care unit or the intensive care unit. But you can have patients in the intensive care unit who are stable, with a stable blood pressure, stable heart rate, maybe they're even off the ventilator. Or you can have patients in the intensive care unit, in the critical care unit, who are really critical, whose blood pressure is falling, who are near death. And so it's very hard to tell from the word critical what exactly that means. I think what the doctor was saying was that these 2 hours are going to be very telling. That tells me that if something doesn't happen in these next couple of hours, these patients are, in fact, there's a good chance they could pass on. I can't confirm that. There's no way to tell because we couldn't get any more information from the doctor except to say these patients have been hit in crucial areas in the body, and that would say to me either the heart, the spinal cord, the brain, or some very important intra-abdominal organs such as the aorta.
All right,
okay,
thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much. We have a map showing you where this happened. If you're familiar with this area at all, this is just as you begin the border of the borough of Wilkinsburg from the city of Pittsburgh, Penn Avenue. We're talking heading east from Point Breeze, Homewood, into a very congested area. A lot of fast food restaurants. Obviously, there's a hospital there, a Forbes Regional Hospital. A lot of businesses. You're too far away from the Wilkinsburg Business District, and this, of course, happened at the lunch hour, and that's a heavily traveled area, Penn Avenue, and that entire section right there, as we see live from Chopper 11. So really, it couldn't have happened, I guess, at a worse time.
At a busier time, right. Hundreds and hundreds of people there, and earlier we saw pictures of the police trying to evacuate these many, many people from this area. Andy Gassmeyer is joining us now inside Chopper 11. Andy?
Peggy, as you hear what police officers are telling us and just did in that brief news conference about 5 minutes ago, you get a better appreciation now for what, or rather how things are unfolding here. As we look down at the McDonald's, and just to the left of it, you can see the Penn West building, which is the focus of so much attention right now, with police cars on every corner of that building, and we figure no less than 5 or 6 SWAT team members inside that house. When you heard the police holding that news conference, they were talking about they're having several hostages and that the suspect or the actor released some of them, and they were members of a senior daycare facility. And we understand that that he is probably holed up on the floor where the senior daycare facility is located.
Okay, Andy, thank you very much. Rick Earl is live outside there right now, outside the Wilkins house. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, David, we're right outside of Wilkins' house right now. Let me show you the scene here. You can see lining up the street over here behind me, a number of paramedics, a number of ambulance lined up here outside of Wilkins' house. Now I want to turn around this way. If you can pan over here, Mike, you can see the police officers surrounding Wilkins' house and Penn West office building.
I'm sorry, we have to interrupt. We have breaking news on this breaking news, and they have the suspect, we were told,
That's what
Peggy.
we're hearing. Amy Marcinkiewicz, are you there? Okay, we did get word from Amy. Apparently, she's trying to gather the information right now, but we did get a word from our reporter on the scene, Amy Marcinkiewicz, that they have the suspect. We do not know right now if he is dead or alive or how he was apprehended, but we do understand that they have him, and we hope to have more details for you in just a few minutes.
Peggy?
Yes, Amy, what can you tell us?
Hi, Peggy. I just talked with a police source. I asked him, we had heard information and had been going over the scanner that they got him, that they have arrested this suspect. He is in custody. That is confirmed through one of my police sources here on the scene, has told me that the person has been taken into custody. That's all the information I can give you right now. I'll continue to try to work this, but what I heard from one police officer here on the scene is that they have this man in custody.
Amy, you have no idea about the condition of the hostages this man was apparently holding?
Peggy, I just got this information, and if you give me a couple of minutes, I'll try to get more information.
Okay, we'll talk to you in just a bit.
Well, this has been going on now since 11:30 this morning, so that is more than 2.5 hours. Just a tragic situation there in the Wilkinsburg area near the city of Pittsburgh border. And obviously, we had 5 people shot. One of them has passed away, and others are still in critical condition in a hostage situation following that. Andy Gassmeyer with more information for us. Andy.
David, if you're looking at the scene below us, you can see a police car that is leaving the area now with lights flashing, and that car had pulled out from the Penn West building where the actor had been holed up for the past 2 hours or so. That is the only police car that we have seen leaving the building since we got word just a few minutes ago that they now have the suspect in custody. Can we say for sure that that is the car in which they may be taking him away? No, we cannot. And we don't know how much before we got the official word that he had been taken into custody, he actually had been apprehended. But our assumption right now, and I emphasize from 2,600 feet above the scene, is that he is in that car below us, and that is only an assumption.
Andy?
Yes, David?
Andy, was anybody, including yourself, able to see the suspect being walked to the car? Was he indeed walking, and what do we know about that?
No, our visibility here is limited, David, because as you may know, it was around 1:30 this afternoon that police and SWAT team ordered all helicopters in the area as far back from the Penn West building as they probably, as we could get. Now we're flying at 2,600 feet. We've got some rain and we've got poor visibility, so it was hard seeing exactly what was going on outside the Penn West building at the time we did get the official confirmation that the actor or the suspect had been taken into custody. But the reason they had ordered us back, of course, was probably for concerns that if he was in that senior daycare center, he had access to a television and he could be watching all the coverage.
Andy, luckily we have the Sky Zoom camera, which still gives us good pictures there from that great distance away, despite the mist and the fog and the rain there. All right, Andy, thanks very much.
Okay.
All right, let's go back to Amy Marcinkowitz right now. Amy, do you have new information?
Peggy, I have had the time to talk to a couple police people out here who have told me that they have been told by their commander they are free to go. This person, this suspect, is in custody, that he is alive, and that the hostages are all alive and okay also. That's the latest information that I could get from the scene right now, but I've been told, the police people that I've been talking to that are out here on the scene, that have been out here for hours, have been told by their commander that they are free to go, that this is over, and that the suspect is in custody.
Okay, Amy, some good news there, and good news about those hostages as well, Peggy.
Certainly.
Yeah.
And they, of course, they had the skilled hostage negotiators on the scene, and I would imagine people who were either related to or knew the suspect, so apparently it all paid off. We certainly hope to have more information that we can supply to you, but in situations like this that are happening live, the information comes in little bits and pieces, and we'll pass it along to you as it comes into us.
Top part of your screen right there, live pictures from Chopper 11. We have been following a patrol car, which Andy Gastmeyer, who is live in Chopper 11, suspects, doesn't know for sure, that may contain the suspect in this horrible ordeal. And Andy, I also want to acclimate myself to this Penn West office building. Is that part of the large old Columbia Hospital complex?
David, I'm not familiar, but I think you may be right in terms of using that term, the Columbia Hospital Complex, because it is a series of buildings, boxes, and rectangles connected, and most of them are about 4 or 5 stories in height. So I think that may be part of the old Columbia Hospital Complex.
I'm familiar, Andy, with that street that he's heading. He's heading to the municipal building right there in Wilkinsburg, which is the borough offices and the police department and fire as well there in Wilkinsburg, as best as I can tell. Yes, indeed. That's the front door of it. And he should be pulling into a side parking lot right now, and indeed he is.
Yeah, we're going to try to rise above the roof of that building so as to get a better look at...
yeah, get a straight down shot of it if you can there, Andy, and see if we can get a better look at indeed the suspect is there.
He's at the side door where they normally take suspects in around. Neil, if we could swing around, there you go.
Again, our chopper's been pushed back to about 2,600 feet. The authorities have been asking helicopters to move away a bit more, and we're again lucky to have our Sky Zoom camera, which can zoom right in despite the misty, rainy conditions today.
Now, unfortunately, the weather isn't cooperating, or we would have a crystal clear picture of whoever is coming out of this police car.
Andy, I'm guessing we have as good a look at this as you are, where someone in a white shirt is being led out right now.
Yes, David, this would appear to be the suspect. And again, we emphasize that it would appear to be the suspect. But after all, Wilkinsburg police do have jurisdiction here. And we can assume that, and I underscore the word assume, that they are taking him in for questioning right now.
I would say that was a good job of spotting by you earlier, Andy. Indeed, that appears to be very likely to be the suspect that was just taken from that car into the Wilkinsburg Police Headquarters, and we followed that all the way along there from Chopper 11. The car now parking, and this situation obviously has taken a dramatic turn for the better, with the capture of the suspect and the hostages not being hurt. The hostages he had taken there in the Penn West building, but not before, though, 5 people were shot.
Right, it might be a good idea, David, to recap for
Yes.
some of our viewers who are just joining us, because this has been just a particularly tragic day in our area. This all started around 11:30 this morning. Apparently, we heard from a landlord who told our Amy Marcinkiewicz that one of her tenants called about trouble with the door when the maintenance workers arrived. He was very angry, set his apartment on fire, went out onto Wood Street. Apparently, that's again from the landlord, shot one of the workers. Here we see some people being evacuated from the building. These look like children.
From a daycare center. This is earlier videotape that we shot, just to reference this for you as you're watching along right now. Go ahead, Peggy.
After Wood Street, he went into a Burger King, shot somebody there, shot a couple of people in McDonald's. 5 in all, and 4 of those people remain in very critical condition. One, we're told, has passed away. Again, these are the children being evacuated from a daycare center. What a scary day for all these people. Let's go back to our Amy Marcinkiewicz now, who has been wonderful getting information for us. Amy?
Oh, I just talked with another police source who said that suspect is in custody, and now we can release his name. He is Ronald Taylor. Police knew all along who this person was, but because this was such a volatile situation, they didn't want to give out too much information to hurt anybody involved. They have in custody Ronald Taylor. I don't know his name. All I know is that he lives in an apartment on Wood Street. That's where this all started. Let me recap for you what happened. Excuse me, I've been running a little bit, so I'm a little out of breath. Police tell us that it started this morning when he was landlord and 2 maintenance men were called to his apartment. He had had a fight with them. They say to us he had had a fight with them, was upset. They wanted to fix his door. The landlord says he threatened her and 2 of the maintenance men, and then that he set his apartment on fire. Police pick up the story from there. Police tell us he shot one of the maintenance men, and then he went down Wood Street. He went to Burger King. Police tell us he shot a person there. That person somehow made his way up here to the McDonald's, where the suspect, Ronald Taylor, went inside the Burger King, went inside the McDonald's, went behind the counter, shot the manager, went outside through the other door. You can see right behind me right now, people are taking pictures. The person in that red car was getting his drive-through, shot him, made his way down and barricaded himself inside that building. Was inside that building for several hours with a couple of hostages. We heard from police 4 or 5 older people, senior citizens who were in wheelchairs. They had been in there, and just a couple of minutes ago, Peggy, like I told you, police got him out. We don't know how. I haven't been able to talk to police. They were busy, how they negotiated him out, but he is out. He is alive. The hostages are alive, and he is now, Ronald Taylor is in police custody.
And there he is right there in tape we shot earlier from Chopper 11, Amy. A white shirt you see moving across, being led away by the dark uniformed police officers and on into the Wilkinsburg Borough Building, the police headquarters there in Wilkinsburg. Amy, thank you very much. Good coverage out there for getting all that information as quickly as you've been getting it for us.
Okay. Amy, do you know if all these shootings were random, or if Ronald Taylor perhaps knew the person he shot at Burger King and the manager at the McDonald's?
From what I'm hearing, Peggy, from the witnesses, from the landlord, from the police, this was random. He didn't know anybody. Police believe that he was somehow upset because of the altercation he had with the landlord and the maintenance men coming to his apartment this morning trying to fix a door. They say he just got irate, set his place on fire, and then took off with a handgun that police believe was fully loaded, and started the shooting spree down Wood Street here in Wilkinsburg.
Okay, Amy, thanks very much. Obviously, our crews there on the ground and in the air are going to continue to follow this and try to find out exactly more about this suspect. We've heard the name Ronald Taylor. That is the suspect's name, and what precipitated all this, what his frame of mind is. Obviously, we're going to try and get some interviews with some people there who maybe have seen something and had heard something, maybe know something about the suspect himself, maybe a friend or a relative, if we possibly can, to try to shed some more light on this for you. Why a man would become so enraged that he would set his own apartment on fire and then go nearby to 2 fast food establishments, first a Burger King, then McDonald's, and shoot 5 people, leaving 4 of them critically injured, and 1 of them has died today. So obviously at this lunch hour, 11:30 in the morning on this Thursday, the first day in March, as Peggy, you said, the worst possible time, the lunch hour, here at these two fast food places, and a very, very busy area. Penn Avenue as it leads east from the city of Pittsburgh into Wilkinsburg. A lot of offices there. You've seen senior centers, daycare centers. A lot of people work and eating around there.
Just a terrifying day for these people. We have some video that we shot earlier during this whole scene where they were leading people out. We see a woman coming out of the McDonald's, obviously very distraught. I know they talked to, as I was watching earlier, this woman for quite a long time today. Clearly she must have witnessed this. She looks visibly upset, and the pictures that you see when something like this happens, David, are just so disturbing. And you know, we report this kind of stuff all of the time, but you know, it rarely happens in our neighborhood, and I think we always think it's not going to happen here where we live, and yet it does, and it's just so troubling.
And then, Peggy, this scene, which reminds you of so many situations we've seen in the past. Columbine, the Jewish Community Center shooting in Los Angeles, children and others being led across the street by authorities. It just gives you pause and makes you thankful for what you have, and you're not involved in something like this, and your heart goes out to those who are involved.
Well, and yet somehow when you're part of this community, we really are all involved. There's something gravely wrong here when a person would do this to other people.
It's unthinkable, as we've pointed out, setting a fire to his own apartment and then shooting the others. We've Andy Gassmeyer again. Andy Gassmeyer live in Chopper 11 has been up there all along, giving us the up-in-the-air view of things in perspective. Andy, take it away.
David, tragically, as this hazy shroud hangs over the McDonald's below us, we're reminded once again of how some people choose to pick up a gun and resolve a dispute, a personal problem, or whatever. You certainly can't help but think about the innocent victims who were involved in this. The man who drove up in that van, which we saw earlier being towed away, doing something as innocent as driving up to a fast food restaurant for a hamburger, a lunch stop, and then being shot at. Likewise, the customer who was behind going through the drive-through window being shot at. No one expecting that this was anything that they had to be fearful of, that is stopping by for a hamburger. And while we think about the possibilities here, we've got one man, one person who is dead already. We may have multiple deaths before the day is over. Often these kinds of things, especially when you are dealing with a person who is deranged, who takes his vengeance out or his anger out with a gun, that person winds up ultimately taking his or her own life. In this particular situation, that did not end that way. The relatives of that suspect now in custody, Ronald Taylor, are no doubt grateful for that, but there will be a lot of introspection and questions here about how it is something as innocent as a day that started out as this for those people going to McDonald's wind up ending up such innocent victims. David?
Yes, indeed, Andy. Thank you very much for your coverage. Let's go to Alan Jennings now with more on this. Alan?
David, we're at Wilkinsburg City Hall. We understand the police are going to be holding a news conference here momentarily. Our cameras are here. We'll be ready for that. Meantime, just a little bit ago, we interviewed Rebecca Van Kirk, the apartment manager at Woodside Garden Apartments on Wood Street. This is where this entire rampage started. Apparently, the suspect shot a maintenance worker at point-blank range in the neck. He was dissatisfied with the service he was getting on a door that he wanted repaired. Then he turned his sights on Rebecca Van Kirk, the apartment manager. He called her on the telephone. He said he was headed to get her next, called her names, cussed at her on the telephone, and apparently he got sidetracked on the way out and wound up at McDonald's. That's the story we got from Rebecca firsthand. We had that interview on tape, on camera. We will have it tonight at 5 o'clock. And that's the latest I have for you, David, live at Wilkinsburg City Hall. We'll keep our eyes on this news conference.
Okay, Alan, thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll get back to Alan and hope to learn more when they do hold that news conference. Let's go now to Rick Earl. Rick, can you shed any more light on this for us?
Well, yes, I can, Peggy. Just a few minutes ago, I talked to police, and they tell me that they actually negotiated the surrender. They said the suspect was inside the building. He was in a hallway. He never actually held anybody hostage. They said he was just seeking refuge in there, hiding out in there. They talked to him for a while. They negotiated the surrender, and they say he peacefully surrendered. surrendered and gave up. That's directly from the police. Now, I do have a mother with me, Carla Cassell. She's a mother of several children. Her children were inside the building. Tell me what happened.
Actually, I got word on the news, on the radio, that there was a man in the building holding our kids hostage. It was traumatizing to me because, like I said, the other reporter, I had an accident there before, and it's traumatizing for my kids.
How old are your children?
My kids are 2 and 5 years old, 2 daughters.
Okay, and how are they?
They're fine. My oldest daughter, she still remembers the accident a month ago, and it's traumatizing for her right now.
What was going through your mind this entire morning?
Actually, I was just thinking about the man shooting our kids, keeping them hostage, anything. Just all types of things were going through my head.
Now, your children were in the daycare here at Wilkins House?
Yes, one's in daycare and one's in kindergarten.
Okay, what did they say to you?
My oldest daughter just came out, just hugged me and just said, "Mommy, I'm happy to see you. There's a man in the building with a gun."
Unbelievable, unbelievable. We're glad they're okay,
yes.
And we're glad you're okay now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. There you have it, a good resolution to a story here. We can tell you, too, that we talked to the manager of the Eckerd Drug. Mike, if you can pan over here, the Eckerd Drug right across the street from Wilkins House here. We talked to him a short time ago, and he actually heard several gunshots in the parking lot across the street from the Eckerd Drugs. He came out and he said he saw people scattering everywhere. Again, police have the suspect in custody. They say he surrendered just a short time ago.
All right, thank you.
Rick, hang on just a second. I want to ask you a question. You said at the time of the arrest, he held no hostages?
That's exactly right, David. We understand from talking to police just a few minutes ago that the individual, the suspect, was in a hallway inside the back of the building, so he never actually had any hostages. We understand there were 4 or 5 people on several floors, some of the floors above where the hostage was, but they said he ran into the hallway and he just hid out there, and that's where police negotiated with him and then eventually negotiated his surrender.
So at no time was he holding hostages, is the
Apparently
police
not, according to the police investigator that I talked to.
All right, all right. Very good,
that's
Rick.
a bit of new information,
Yes.
and good information to hear.
Okay, we have an interview with an employee at Eckerd's drugstore. Let's take a listen to that right now.
Did you see anything?
I heard the 3 shots and then people running.
Then what did you do?
Came back into the store.
How many people did you have in there?
I don't know, quite a few. Okay. Well, she wants me to leave.
What's
Thank
your
you.
name?
Kevin.
Kevin what?
Campbell.
C-A-M-B.
All right.
Kevin Campbell, an employee of Eckerd's, there talking about what he heard the gunshots. We've heard a number of people say they'd heard those shots. How frightening.
Yeah. And the tape unedited there, by the way. I'm sure that the viewer could tell, but that often is the case when we have breaking news. We want to bring things to you right away and don't get a chance to edit it neatly for you.
That gives you another indication, by the way, folks, of how many businesses are right in that concentrated area. There's an Eckerd's there, there's a Dunkin' Donuts there, there's a Crossroads convenience store, there's a gas station not far away. Of course, the 2 McDonald's and Burger King fast food restaurants where the incidents took place. Then you have all those care facilities, some for the elderly, some for young kids, and offices as well. I mean, it is a very, very busy place, and at lunch, an especially busy place.
And police had their hands full. We see video from earlier of the SWAT team outside that building there. One of the biggest jobs that they have in a situation like this is getting people out of harm's way. And as David mentioned, there are so many people, so many businesses in that area. So they really had their work cut out for them today. Again, we see the children, a poignant shot of the children with their arms raised,
look at the
running
one
from
child
the
holding
building.
his arms up in the air. Peggy, you mentioned before how, because this is such a tight-knit community, all of the Pittsburgh area, and we listened to the interview with the mother earlier, how we feel her fear and her anguish of what happened. Could my child be okay? And of course, that situation came to a happy ending. For the other 5 people, obviously it did not, who were shot. But
it could have been much worse.
It could have been much worse.
We have to acknowledge it could have been much worse.
I should also tell folks out there, as I was learning about this earlier today on the radio and on TV, this has been the top story on CNN and on network radio news throughout this afternoon and earlier in the late morning hours. So this is, people around the country are hearing about this. This is not the kind of news we want them to hear about Pittsburgh, but, and there you see more of the SWAT team video from earlier. We have Dr. Mike Rosen again live. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, Dave, we really don't have anything new. They're actually going to make us break down here. They're sending all the reporters over to the auditorium in Montefiore Hospital where they say they're going to keep us updated. Again, to give you an update, there are 4 victims here, 1 over in Mercy. All the victims are male. The one in Mercy, we don't have any new information about. The 4 victims here, 2 are in their 30s, 1 is in his 20s, 1 is in his late 50s. 1 has gone to surgery. 1 has gone to another invasive procedure in radiology. I can't tell you anything more than that. We did interview the doctor earlier, and he said to us he would not tell us anything new except for the fact that all the injuries were critical injuries, very critical injuries. They struck vital organs, the bullets did. Only 1 bullet had struck each victim, but struck the victims in very terrible places. We presume that would mean either the heart, some very significant intra-abdominal organs such as the aorta, or perhaps the brain or the spinal cord. We have no new information other than that. The doctor did say that the next 2 hours are going to be very telling. You could speculate for hours, literally, but you would presume that that would mean that these victims are literally in a life and death sort of situation right now. I would presume that perhaps at least a couple of them would have low blood pressures. They're trying to get their blood pressures up. You can't take a patient to the operating room unless you have adequate blood pressure for the most part. You can, but usually if you do, with very low blood pressure, those victims succumb to death. So we're going to have to wait and see and hear what they have to report to us, and we'll bring all the information to you when we get it.
Now, Mike, the 4 there at UPMC are all alive?
We don't have that information either. I asked that point blank to the doctor, and he said, I can't tell you that. So whatever that means.
Of course, Mike, there have been reports throughout the past, half an hour, 45 minutes, that one of the victims passed away.
Right. And I asked him that, and I said, we got reports that one of the victims has died, and he would not answer yes or no as to whether or not one of those victims, that victim was here at Presbyterian Hospital.
I can tell you I heard that on both local and national radio and on national CNN that there was a death. So I just want to...
The Associated Press is also
reporting that. Very
Mike,
good.
do you know about the person at Mercy Hospital?
We have no new information from the person at Mercy, and again, you're getting those news reports. We're getting it straight from the surgeon's mouth. He would not confirm nor deny. Now, more than likely, and I can tell you from working in emergency rooms, there are police officers in that emergency room. There are police officers around those victims right now because they're actually considered crime victims. And so they're trying to get any new information they can get, and they're getting it firsthand from right inside the emergency room. So what's happening probably is they're getting the information from the victims, from the nurses, from the doctors. They're calling other officers out in the field, and then those officers are conveying it to our reporters. So it's almost sort of like a telephone situation.
Mike, while there's great relief at the crime scene, the suspect has been taken in. There has been an arrest. Right. He was holding no hostages, apparently, either throughout the ordeal or at the time of his arrest. Tense moments and great anguish where you are. This is obviously not over because we're hoping for the best for those victims.
Right. We've seen some of the victims here. They've been taken into the emergency room to be with the victims. And let me tell you, this doesn't end. As you know and as you've seen from other traumas around the country, this is a psychological trauma, not just a physical trauma that's going to linger. And they are going to have counselors come in to counsel not just the victims, but also the victims' families.
All right, thanks very much. Mike Rosen. All our reporters are going to be staying on the scene. We're still continuing to work this tragic story. The only good news out of this story is that the suspect is in custody, but unfortunately, before they could take him into custody, he shot 5 people.
Okay, we're going to leave WPXI Channel 11 right now. We're going to stay on PCNC, the Pittsburgh Cable News Channel, to continue our coverage. So regular programming on Channel 11 right now. And if you want to continue to follow this story, we will be on PCNC Live. So
join
stay right
us
here.
at 5 for breaking news.
In just minutes, Channel 11 News starts with continuing coverage of today's fatal shooting spree. From the first shots at 11:30 a.m. to the arrest of the suspect hours later, we have complete coverage. You'll hear from parents whose children were in the neighborhood, the police about how they apprehended the suspect, and doctors will tell you how the 4 injured people are doing. Stay tuned. Coverage you can count on is only minutes away.
Coverage you can count on Channel 11 News.
The lunch rush was about to start, but instead, ambulances and police rushed to a local McDonald's and Burger King. A gunman opens fire. Live Team 11 coverage, first at 5.
We've been covering this story all afternoon. 5 people shot at 2 Wilkinsburg restaurants. 2 victims were killed. Chopper 11 is live over the now relatively quiet scene.
And this was probably the most emotional image of the entire afternoon. Police hustling children from a daycare out of the building where the shooter holed up after the gunfire.
The suspect first fired a shot on Wood Street, hitting 1 victim. He then moved to the Burger King on Wood Street, where he shot 1 person. Then he went to the McDonald's across the street, where he shot 3 people before holing up in the Wilkinsburg house, or the Wilkins House building, until his capture at 2 p.m.
We have complete live Team 11 coverage for you on this, from the shooting to the victims to all who were in critical condition at the last check, and from the suspect and the evacuees to the ensuing standoff. We start with the very latest live from the scene in Wilkinsburg. Channel 11's Amy Marcinkiewicz is there. Amy.
Well, David, you can only imagine it. Imagine it. You're here at the McDonald's in the drive-thru getting your lunch, and you're shot. Innocent people were seriously injured here. And tonight we are learning more about the suspect, Ronald Taylor. Here's what police say Taylor surrendered. He surrendered down this hallway in the Penn West office building. Police say he wanted to know how many were dead. He talked of killing himself. Police say he had on him a .22 caliber handgun, a knife, and we don't know how much ammo. Heavily armed SWAT team members poised for problems, innocent folks forced to run and duck for cover, weapons drawn, people down.
Sir, can you take someone behind the yellow line, please?
Chaos on the streets of Wilkinsburg. The cause, police say a man with a gun shooting anyone who got in his way. Who could imagine it all started over a broken door? Police say Ronald Taylor, upset with service, set his apartment on fire, then hit the street with a gun. He had officers running. Police evacuating women and young children. Within minutes, he had destroyed lives on this stretch. 5 shot randomly. At 2 p.m., new information from police. He could have gotten more.
As the officers were coming back from the hospital area, they spotted the actor running from the McDonald's. He fired 2 shots at our officers and barricaded himself.
He entered a building with young children in a daycare, senior citizens in therapy, and a doctor's office.
He said he had 1 bullet left, and he didn't know which one to use it on.
Just the parents. Yeah, friends. Parents.
Tense moments, tearful moments.
So much relief now. We're just shaking and nervous all throughout this whole thing.
And then joyful moments when Taylor gave up. Now, we have learned from Wilkinsburg police that Ronald Taylor has no criminal history at all. This story is getting national attention. We have also learned that President Clinton has ordered a person from the Treasury Department to come here to Pittsburgh to trace the gun used in this shooting spree. I'll have much more new at 6. Reporting live from Wilkinsburg, Amy Marcinkiewicz, Channel 11 News.
Thanks, Amy. Once police apprehended suspect Ronald Taylor, Channel 11's Alan Jennings went to work trying to find out more information about the suspected gunman. AJ has been at the Wilkinsburg Borough building all day investigating. Alan, what have you learned?
Well, Peggy, I can tell you this. We spent some time, too, at the scene where this rampage all began. That was on Wood Street in Wilkinsburg. We're going to take a look at this video, and what you're going to see here, you can see the video that we shot shows the Woodside Garden Apartments. You can notice the windows blown out. You can tell that there was a fire there. Heat from the fire blew the windows out. Apparently, the fire was set by Ron Taylor, the suspect. He set the fire after taking his first victim. That's what we learned from the security guard in the building. If you can, sir, tell me what you know about what happened here.
Oh, I know that the guy that owned the rented apartment off of him, they were working on his door and he got mad and he shot the one maintenance worker at point blank range in the neck. And then he set the apartment on fire.
Ronald Taylor was on his way around Wilkinsburg trying to get to my office. Because I know he was after me. I know it for sure. He said, "You come back into the building, you will not live."
Now, Rebecca Van Kirk is the manager of the apartment building. She told me that Taylor was threatening her and other maintenance workers because apparently he wasn't happy with the work that was being done at his apartment. He lived there about a year, no criminal past history that anyone can determine. He lived there alone. Now, we also talked to Police Sergeant John Fisher, hostage negotiator. He's the officer that actually talked Taylor out to put his gun down and to surrender. Fisher told me just a short while ago that Taylor asked about the people that he shot. He said he couldn't remember how many he shot, but that he was concerned about their condition. We'll have an interview at 6 o'clock with Sergeant Fisher coming up. Live in Wilkinsburg, Alan Jennings. Peggy, back to you.
Okay, Alan, we look forward to that. Thanks very much. Meantime, the gunman wasn't the only one inside the building he ended up in. There were many more people, both adults and children, trapped inside that building, and Channel 11's Rick Earl is live with their story. Rick.
Well, David, of course, as word of that shooting spread, many people raced here to check on their loved ones who work inside the Wilkins house or inside the Penn West building over there. That's where the gunman went into the Penn West building. And that's over here, if you take a look with me over here in this parking lot, this is where many people watched and waited.
She's on the second floor there. She's at the window right now, as a matter of fact.
Don Tresser spotted his fiancée, Janet Lukic, in the window of the Penn West building. He used his cell phone to stay in touch with her.
They're okay. They're holed up on the floor. They won't let them leave, and everybody's okay. They're just waiting. So she's calling me whenever she can to let me know she's all right.
As police surrounded the building, Tresser and his fiancée's sister waited anxiously in a parking lot across the street.
She said that things are pretty much under control right now. They feel very safe at this point, but she would just like to get out so she can be with her family.
Then, just after 1 o'clock, police escorted Lukic and others out of the building.
They took us out the front door to the left and then across the street.
Did they have you duck down, or did they give you...
No, they just kind of guided us to hurry it along.
Janet Lukic works for a home health agency. She was in her office when she says gunfire erupted.
And around 11:30, we heard gunfire going off. We thought was gunfire, and when we jumped up out of our chairs, we realized that's what it was, because there were people running through the streets and police officers chasing and guns everywhere, so it was a little overwhelming. And
It was like surreal. It was like unreal. I couldn't believe it was really happening. Glad it's over.
Now, Janet Lukic told me that she spent the time in her office with 10 co-workers. She's told me that she never once saw the gunman. That's apparently because he stayed in a hallway on the first floor of that Penn West building. For now, reporting live in Wilkinsburg, Rick Earl, Channel 11 News.
Now the latest on the 5 victims of this lunchtime shooting. Channel 11's Dr. Mike Rosen is at UPMC Presbyterian, where doctors are treating 3 of the 5 victims. Dr. Mike is live with late-breaking information.
That's right, Peggy. All the victims were male. All of them were taken to UPMC except for one. That person was taken to Mercy Hospital. All of them are in critical condition except for one. Now, we don't know which one. There were 4 males taken here, one in his 20s, one in his late 50s, two of them in their 30s. One of them has died. We don't know which one because of very severe chest injury. I'm here with Dr. Rick Townsend, who is a trauma surgeon here at UPMC. Dr. Townsend, what's the status of the victims right now and the nature of their injuries?
Well, there were 4 victims that presented to our institution, each one of which had sustained a single gunshot wound. As you described, one of the victims sustained a gunshot wound at the base of the neck, entering the chest cavity, and that patient died very soon after arriving in our institution. We then treated 3 other victims in rapid succession, 2 of which had sustained significant head injuries, one of which is potentially a lethal wound. The second victim was taken to the operating room and was awake prior to going to the operating room, so we're hopeful that his prognosis will be good. The final victim sustained a gunshot wound to the right side of his face, causing damage to bones and to blood vessels. However, that injury does not at this time seem to be life-threatening. All of these victims are going to be in the intensive care unit, obviously.
Dr. Townsend, thanks very much. That's it from here at UPMC. Reporting live, I'm Dr. Mike Rosen, Channel 11 News.
Okay, Dr. Mike, thank you very much. Another victim was undergoing treatment at Pittsburgh's Mercy Hospital tonight, and Channel 11's Natasha Brown is live there with the very latest. Natasha.
Well, we apparently do have some somber news to report here from Mercy Hospital. According to Pittsburgh police, the 65-year-old man who was brought here, the only shooting victim brought here to Mercy Hospital, has apparently just died. Now, we understand that he was one of the people inside the McDonald's during the time of this shooting rampage. This man was brought in very, very critical condition. We understand that he apparently stayed in critical condition up until moments ago, and we learned that he has died through police. Now, earlier today, we were able to speak with the trauma surgeon whose team of doctors was actually responsible for trying to save this victim's life.
He arrived in very critical condition and has remained as such since then. He's been attended by one of my partners, another trauma surgeon here, and as well as a neurosurgeon at the bedside.
Well, we are again waiting to talk to hospital officials. We've been in touch with them throughout the entire time that we've been here. We also understand that family members are here on hand. We can't give you an identity of this victim at this time. We understand that hospital officials are in the process of trying to reach at least one other daughter before they release his identity to us. But apparently the family has called in a minister to try to comfort them in this time of need. That's the very latest here from Mercy Hospital. Reporting live, Natasha Brown, Channel 11 News.
All right, we're going to go right now to Andy Gastmeyer, who has some breaking information for us. Andy?
From the air, it looked more like an armed camp than a fast food restaurant, so symbolic of fun and family to so many. Within minutes of the first shot, it was under siege. Not just the restaurant where two unsuspecting lunchtime patrons and the store's manager were shot at point-blank range, but as well the area immediately around it, cordoned off to keep the innocent out and hopefully the shooter in. Before the hour was out, the scope of the police dragnet had expanded to include a nearly two-block area around the McDonald's. Police officers, fearing the worst, crouched behind their cars with guns at the ready, facing the Penn West building where the man they would later identify as Ronald Taylor had holed up. Not long after that, those evacuated from the building would be ushered out, including children from a daycare center inside, under the armed protection of SWAT team members, a scene so reminiscent of so many similar tragedies played out elsewhere across the country. While the force of police and onlookers grew, as did the concern tragedy might be piled on top of tragedy, Taylor suddenly appeared outside the building, surrounded by armed officers, and was just as suddenly whisked away in a waiting police car to the Wilkinsburg police station. The ordeal was over in about 3 hours after it had begun. Now, while the shock and the grieving will continue for some time to come, we can be thankful, according to police, that Taylor wasn't any more heavily armed than he was. Reporting live from Chopper 11, Andy Gastmeyer, Channel 11 News.
All right, thank you, Andy. And as we showed you at the top of the newscast, one of the most dramatic scenes was a shot of parents and police rushing children out of a daycare center. It's in the same building where the suspect was hiding from police. Channel 11 Steve Chenevy is live with the emotional story in Wilkinsburg. Steve?
Well, Peggy, imagine if you're a parent and you find out that your child may be held hostage. Well, luckily that was not the case, but some parents thought it may have been. The kids were at a daycare center at the Penn West building, the building immediately beside the building where police pulled the gunman out of. Now, parents, of course, with the unanswered questions, were left when it was all over with understandably a huge feeling of relief.
I just prayed, God. I just said, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord.
This little girl safely peers out of the window of her mother's car just minutes after police released the child to her mother, whose worst fears were running through her head while her child was inside.
It was traumatizing. The only thing that was going through my mind that this man was going to either get the kids and shoot them. Never knew what was going to happen.
Detectives and negotiators tell me the gunman never got near the children, a fact of little consolation to parents at the time.
I was very upset. I started crying. I was shaking. I kept calling the daycare. She said everything was okay, though.
Linnell Brown's 3-month-old daughter, Deasia, was one of 37 children evacuated and kept away from the daycare until nearly an hour after police captured the gunman.
We were relieved when we found out they had caught the guy. We were relieved then. Until then, though, we were pretty scared.
Say, I went through war today, huh? That man was up there shooting. Yeah, I knew.
While their parents counted their blessings, the kids flashed smiles, perhaps sighs of relief after a situation much more intense than their young minds may have ever known. Now, parents tell us many of the kids in the daycare here at the Penn West building didn't even know what was going on. None of those children were hurt. Reporting live in Wilkinsburg, Steve Chenevy, Channel 11 News.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much. Here again is what we know at this hour. 5 people were shot, 2 killed in this morning's shooting rampage. Right now, 3 victims are in critical condition at the hospital. The suspect, Ronald Taylor, is in custody. Our crews are still working to gather new details on the suspect and on the victims. Plus, we're taking a closer look at how today's shooting is being felt around the nation as Pittsburgh joins the growing list of cities falling victim to these deadly shooting sprees. We'll have the up-to-the-minute details as new information comes in on Channel 11 News.
Tonight, new details on the shooting at a Michigan school that killed a first grader. That's coming up.
It's been years in the making, and tonight cars are rolling on one part of the Mont-Fayette Expressway. We're on the ground and in the air.
Tom Murphy's development plan. Merchants like Bonnie Klein, who may have to leave, spoke out with passion.
We purchased this building, we paid our taxes on this building, we'll have it paid off in 2 more years. We never asked for any type of tax subsidies here.
The people with last names like Klein and Maloney and Schiller and Coomer have exactly the same legal rights as people with names like McClatchy or Rooney.
The mayor fought back at an afternoon news conference. At his side were people who've been relocated by other development projects.
We were very much funded appropriately.
Mayor Murphy says he hopes the acquisition of property can be accomplished without eminent domain, but says he's unfazed by pressure from Washington attorneys.
Hey, you know what? We get sued 3 or 4 times a day, so, you know, we move forward.
Now, at his news conference, the mayor also said the city would help find new jobs for anyone displaced by Fifth and Forbes. Reporting live, Jodine Costanzo, Channel 11 News.
This is Channel 11 Carnegie Science Center weather.
And with all the breaking news, a quick look at the weather tonight. Rain showers in still mild air moving into southwestern Pennsylvania this evening. As we take you down closer into Beaver County, light rain showers moving through Aliquippa and Ambridge, but brace yourself, more moderate rains are just about to sweep through there in our next wave of rain that's coming across the neighborhoods. Let's check the facts and figures for you. Again, it's been mild, 54 degrees, 56 for our high, and 41 this morning's low temperature, and relative humidity at 71%. The west winds are going at 18 miles per hour, and the pressure rising at 29.79 inches of mercury, 0.14 of an inch of rain on the day. We'll walk you through the forecast here in detail, starting with tonight, windy and colder, and we have a cold front coming in that'll change our rain showers over to snowflakes, and a little coating is possible on grassy surfaces by morning. The overnight low 30 degrees, and then tomorrow the flakes should be ending by early afternoon. And then we'll get into a variable cloud situation, and winds will be out of the west-northwest at times 10 to 20 miles per hour, so a brisk day. The high 36 degrees, and in your 5-day forecast, well, tomorrow night's low 25, and then we'll have just a little bit of a mild up for you on Friday. A mix of clouds and sun back to 43 degrees, which is about normal for this time of year. And then we'll start seeing that upward turn go again. A lot of sun Saturday, 48. Look at Sunday, 57 with a mix of clouds and sun. And we're at 66 degrees on Monday with a lot of sunshine falling to the 40s at night. And that's your Carnegie Science Center forecast. David?
Channel 11 News broke the story of a Pennsylvania group charging drug companies with gouging seniors on drug prices. Tonight we show you a way to ensure that you get drugs cheaper if you qualify. Details new at 5:30.
We're getting new details on the shootings at a McDonald's and Burger King in Wilkinsburg. New information is coming in every minute. Don't miss our newest updates coming up new at 5:30.
Well, the first full day of the Glenwood Bridge closure caused some morning rush hour problems today. Traffic was at a crawl this morning during the rush hour. The bridge closed yesterday for major repairs. It will be closed for at least 7 months. Route 837 and East Carson Street are 2 alternate routes.
Trains are up and running slowly today after the Monday derailment in Westmoreland County. Crews are continuing the cleanup in Vandergrift. The train was headed to Roanoke, Virginia when 21 of the 122 cars jumped the tracks. Investigators have no new information about the probe into the cause of the accident.
And police have a 16-year-old student in custody for allegedly making bomb threats at Seneca Valley Intermediate High School. Teenager was arrested last night by Jackson Township Police. He is charged with terroristic threats, risking a catastrophe, and disorderly conduct. Teens accused of leaving threatening notes at the school on February 16th and 23rd. Penn State University trying to crack down on students who cheat. The university wants to prevent cheating students from switching schools just to avoid getting labeled a cheater. Penn State's Faculty Senate approved the new rules yesterday. The university's president is expected to approve the rules for fall 2000 classes.
New at 5:30, up-to-the-minute details of the lunchtime shooting. 2 local restaurants under siege by a lone gunman. We've had live coverage as police and SWAT teams swarm Wilkinsburg. It continues next on Channel 11 News at 5:30.
If you see traffic in the morning, dial pound 1111, a free call from your Bell Atlantic mobile phone. Triple team traffic on Channel 11 Morning News. Coverage you can count on.
Continuing live coverage of a local story making headlines nationwide. 5 people shot during a lunchtime shooting. It's coming up.
Part of the Montfan Expressway finally opened, but it'll cost you. Details ahead.
Plus new details on a story we broke. We found a way around high drug prices for seniors. It's all at 5:30.
Coverage you can count on Channel 11 News.
Tonight, live at 5:30, continuing coverage of our major story, the lunchtime shooting in Wilkinsburg.
You've probably heard by now that 5 people were shot today, 1 on Wood Street, 1 in the Wilkinsburg Burger King, and 3 at the McDonald's. 2 of the victims have died. Live Team 11 coverage at 5:30. Amy Marcinkowitz is live with the latest from the scene. Channel 11 Steve Shenevy has reaction from local leaders. We start live with Amy at the scene. Amy, what have you learned new since 5?
Well, Peggy, I can tell you that police have Ronald Taylor in custody. They are questioning him right now. Those that know him, those that say were threatened by him, say Taylor, a black man, had a problem with white people. In fact, they say he passed up African Americans on the street and shot all white men during his rampage. Taylor's landlord did tell me he threatened her today, told her he was going to kill her just because she was white. The McDonald's here where we are at, where the majority of the shootings took place, remains shut down tonight. In fact, police tell me they are dealing with 5 different crime scenes, and this is going to take some time. Of course, we'll stay on the story and we'll bring you new details, new at 6. Reporting live in Wilkinsburg, Amy Marcinkowitz, Channel 11 News.
All right, Amy, thank you very much. And Pittsburgh City Council President Bob O'Connor was at the shooting scene today talking about the violence and the national reaction to it. And Channel 11 Steve Shenevy is live with that part of the story from Wilkinsburg. Steve.
Well, he was, and Bob O'Connor the first to tell me that the ATF called in almost immediately to try and trace the gun to see where that gun came from. The entire incident came to an end in a hallway inside the building you'll be able to see on the far left of your television screen. Let's take a look inside now and show you the hallway where police were able to talk the gunman into giving up his weapons, a .22 caliber handgun and a knife. That's when police took the gunman into custody. Councilman Bob O'Connor was at the command post as police brought the gunman outside.
Seemed very calm, very natural. They had him handcuffed. He was, I would say, well dressed. He had a white sweater on, black pants, looked like a normal average person, clean cut looking guy.
O'Connor, of course, says that the city will try and help out as much as they can. Wilkinsburg handling the investigation now, but as you might imagine, local, county, and federal police all involved in this investigation. Reporting live, Steve Shenevy, Channel 11 News.
Governor Ridge was in town today giving a speech when he heard about the shooting, and he was asked whether stricter gun laws and background checks could have prevented this tragedy.
It would be premature for me to make it would be too speculative for me to respond to that question. We will determine once we have all the facts about this individual, the name, etc. We'll determine whether or not any of the laws we have in place could have prevented the acquisition of this firearm by this individual. But at this point, I think it's really too early to tell.
Ridge was briefed by police about the suspect. He says he's not sure whether background checks would have kept the gun out of his hands.
Mass shooting sprees, unfortunately, have become the norm in our country. In the past few years, dozens have died in workplace and in school shootings. And Channel 11's Daria Chisholm is live now in our satellite center with a timeline of these tragic events. Daria.
David, this shooting has caught the attention of the nation. In fact, President Clinton spoke out about the shooting today.
Today there was another terrible shooting in the Wilkinsburg community in Allegheny County in western Pennsylvania. We don't know all the facts yet, but it was a bad situation.
Today's shooting comes just one day after a 6-year-old brought a gun to school and opened fire.
The first grader pulled out the gun in the middle of class and fired once, fatally shooting a fellow first grader. The boy apparently argued with the 6-year-old girl the day before on the playground. November 3rd, 1999, gunmen walked into a Seattle shipyard office and killed 2 men and injured 2 others. Police had a sketch of the suspect, but never caught him. The day before, November 2nd, police say a disgruntled Xerox worker walked into his office and opened fire, killing 7 of his co-workers. The gunman held police at bay for 15 hours before he was arrested. August 10th, 1999, Los Angeles. Police say Buford Furrow walked into a Jewish community center daycare and opened fire. Children and daycare workers were injured. Police say Furrow killed a postal worker after fleeing from the daycare. July 30th, Mark Barton, a day trader in Atlanta, shot and killed 9 people and injured 13 others at 2 brokerage firms. Barton lost more than $100,000. Before the shootings, Barton had killed his wife and 2 children. Barton shot and killed himself as police closed in on him. Last April 20th was one of the worst school shootings in U.S. history. Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris walked into Columbine High School and shot and killed 13 students and a teacher before killing themselves. April 24th, 1998, police say a 14-year-old Edinburgh high school student shot and killed a teacher at a dance. And March 24th, 1998, Jonesboro, Arkansas, 2 students, ages 11 and 13, shot and killed 4 girls and a teacher.
Now, of course, both boys in the Jonesboro shooting have been convicted of murder, and they will be in jail until the age of 21. We're also told that President Clinton is asking Congress to send him gun legislation so that he can sign a bill into law. Reporting live in the Satellite Center, I'm Darieth Chisholm.
All right, and you can count on Channel 11 News to bring you up-to-the-minute details in all of our newscasts tonight, including the latest on the conditions of the 3 surviving victims. We will have new details as they happen, with new details coming up at 6.
And today's rampage, as we just said, came just 24 hours after the deadly violence in a Michigan elementary school. We have new information about that story tonight. 6-year-old boy killed a 6-year-old girl yesterday morning. Today, police say they have arrested 1 man and are looking for another in connection with the shooting.
It's our understanding from the police investigation that this gun was obtained from a bedroom under some blankets which had been left laying, apparently loaded, in this bedroom. We are seeking to question an individual who we believe owned this gun, or at least possessed the gun, and we have the Michigan State Fugitive Team looking for him at this point.
Prosecutors also say that they can't charge the 6-year-old because he's too young, and that's why they're vigorously pursuing those responsible for giving that child access to the gun. Police still aren't sure why the girl was shot.
Tonight, we want your opinion. Should the adult who gave the Michigan child access to the gun be held responsible for the death of the 6-year-old girl? We want your vote, yes or no. Call toll-free 877-833-WPXI. Extension poll. We're going to update the results at 6. Last night at 6, we broke the story of alleged price gouging of prescription drugs.
If you're a senior living in Allegheny County or anywhere in western Pennsylvania, think you're paying too much for prescription drugs? We've got a couple of options for you. I'm Newland Arch, and I'll have those coming up.
And also new at 6, of course, we'll have the complete Team 11 coverage of the lunchtime shooting in Wilkinsburg, including new details on the victims and a man who narrowly escaped a brush with the gunman. Plus, a 6-year-old girl's day at the park turns sour after she's attacked by a pit bull. Live coverage new at 6. And if U.S. Airways flight attendants go on strike, Pittsburgh might not be as hit as hard as other cities. We'll explain why new at 6. And people are crossing the border as Powerball jackpot climbs to $100 million now. Local coverage you can count on new at 6 on Channel 11 News.
If you see news happening, call our toll-free hotline. The number is 1-800-237-WPXI.
In March 1993, a blizzard dropped 18 inches of snow on Pittsburgh.